Pakistan, if some of the people know and some of the people do not. So it's a thick density of population, and that matters a lot when we think of building peace among humans. When you have a thickly populated locale, that sentence or that statement in itself brings much details to the reality. How much of the resources are available, what's the what's the population in employment or in economic activity, what's the dependency ratio, and how these features build into peace and conflict. This is a country with diverse landscape. You can see almost all kinds of landscape, and that again adds to the local reality, like how people are living in different parts of the country, and how these disparities become one of the elements within the local peace and conflict situation. So we do have agricultural lands, then we have mountains, then we have water resources and rainforests, and so much more. Culture of this country is rich in the sense that it has one of the ancient traditions and history. So the culture comes from the 5,000 years of history, and that that brings with it all the details of local arts, local craft, and until now, the living craftsman and the crafts itself. And then there are more than 50 languages being spoken in one homeland. And then having such a diverse population within this small locale, you also enjoy the variety of games and sports and festivities, and I love the diversity in food itself as well. So all these things bring together a very colorful culture altogether. The culture is, as I see it now, during my study on peace education, I cannot forget these few things written at the bottom of this screen, which is, yes, there are traditions, there is local wisdom, indigenous knowledge, and all that. Then there has been a huge influence of religion, specifically speaking, in Pakistan. And then there has been an influence of colonialism, there have been wars in the region, and Pakistan has had 3 long periods of dictatorship as well. So if with this background I look at the social fabric, I cannot ignore some of the major features, which is the post-colonial regional disparities, because after the colonial period, we can clearly see how certain parts of the country developed more, and then the other parts were not so developed, and even after 75, 76 years of independence, we still see those disparities among the regions. Then there have been wars in the region directly. Pakistan has been directly involved in some of the wars, and in others it has been involved indirectly, that we will open up in a minute. And that brought um, a reality to our lives, that this is not a welfare state, this is more of a security state and ideological state as well, I would say. Then having longer periods of dictatorship in the country has given a dictator mindset, and that dictator mindset can be seen even at the household level and the neighborhood level as well, and obviously the institutions. Then there's a severe socio-economic warfare, because you if you look at the national or international economic surveys and reports, you can see how big the divide is and how big the gap is between the so-called elite and other socioeconomic classes. Violent extremism is usually talked about in the name of religious extremism, but if you break it down and try to study it further, it's also on the basis of ethnic identity, on the basis of gender, of course, and on the basis of linguistic disparities and differences as well. Gender discrimination in this region is one of the huge challenges that I, as an educator, see, and I, as a peace builder, see as well. Because male dominated society, having all sorts of patriarchy from household level to the state level, brings more and more details to it. And then as I am working through the lens of the theories, I would say, given by Johan Galtung, the Norwegian scholar. So I can clearly see in the social fabric, I can clearly see the direct social and structural violence in the society. Along with that, if you look at the other side of the slide, you will see that people have some very unique, I would say, very unique characteristics, or the culture has these characteristics, that they are very helpful to each other. Having all those things on the left hand side, as we discussed, and then charity and philanthropy and altruism is one of the major characteristics. And lastly, patience, because this narrative of patience has been promoted, has been advocated a lot. These three words sound very positive, and I wish I could see them more positively, but what happens is that when people, and majority of the people, have these characteristics, the elements on the left hand side use these characteristics. And for instance, I would just give one statement and we can open it up later. For instance, the dictator mindset in the regimes which are in power, they encourage more and more philanthropists and charity organizations to take care of the things that they should have taken care of. So that's just one statement that I would say here, and we can talk about it later. Some of the facts that are a bit disturbing, not a bit actually, a lot disturbing. One is that when I started my recent most research on focusing on peace education, or education for peace, is that Pakistan was ranked in 2023 146th among 163 countries. And this is 6th among the 7 South Asian countries. Among the neighboring countries, this is at number 6, and Afghanistan is at number 7. World Justice Project gives a report, and in this report of Rule of Law Index, Pakistan is ranked 130th out of 142. And then UNDP ranked Pakistan 161st out of 192 countries. And then last but not the least, which is very important and very alarming, is that World Economic Forum ranked Pakistan 145th out of 147 global gender gap. So these were a few facts. As I was doing the document analysis and literature review, there were so many other things, but these 3-4 major facts um, are alarming, and they push me more towards thinking how and what should be the process of making things better. I have an experience of 25 years working as an educator and as a psychologist. As an educationist, I put myself in social constructivism theory. And in social constructivism theory, I believe that education is more of a process in which people construct their realities, people construct the knowledge through their own experiences. So if we belong to this school of thought of social constructivism, that experiential learning and social situational learning will bring will construct their new realities. I feel strongly that yes, then education can be a source of social reconstruction. Secondly, as a psychologist, I stand more with the developmental humanism, and that again coincides with the social constructivist theory as well, because as a developmental humanist, I believe that human beings individually, in the group form and in the communities, have come so far in the civilizations, living together and learning to live with each other. So I belong to these two schools of thought, which give me these research assumptions. And my research assumptions are, while I'm working on the educational reforms for peace, my assumptions are: number one, that education is a process of social reconstruction. Curriculum reforms can be a process, can bring a change for peace building. Teachers can be change agent, and inclusive, parallel, non-formal or virtual spaces can be a very useful mode of peace building education. Teachers as change agents is coming from, yes, from the global literature as well, but that's very much grounded in Pakistani culture. I have traveled in Pakistan from far north to south, and I have seen that even if the teachers are mostly worried about their social status in terms of socio-economic status, that this is not a very well paid job in many parts of the country, but the social status, as in the respect given to teachers, is a lot. So when I assume as a researcher that teachers can be change agents, is because their voice matters, and people give value to what they say. Specifically in Pakistan, like more than 60% of the people are still living in rural areas. And in rural areas, when I travel, and I am linked to teachers, teachers are taking me to households, and I see how much people respect their opinion and people value them. Then about virtual learning spaces, as I am working with an institution which is a distance education institution, I realized, and two of my colleagues and myself, we conducted a study, that people in such society where so much has already happened, so much conflict exists and everything, people feel safe in virtual spaces. and they open up, and they come to a point where they say that yes, in a virtual space, when um, we are not physically confronting each other, we feel safer. And the other thing is that with the development of social media and informal learning spaces, I feel as if education also adopts all these modes, this can be a better way to reform. Thinking about education, I cannot forget what has happened in 2 decades specifically, and then the aftermath happened. So in 1980s and 1990s, beginning from 70s actually, but more in 1980s and 1990s, the curriculum was drastically changed in Pakistani schools, and uh, we have been doing studies one after another, and we can clearly see that there was indoctrinated radicalization through education. There was hidden curriculum of hate, and in those curriculum manipulations, I can see clearly how wars and warriors were being glorified. Beyond the curriculum, if we look at the institutional activities, we will see that slowly all kinds of music, creative arts, performing arts were slowly and gradually removed, actually banned in some of the areas. The event celebrations remained. Two kinds of events were celebrated only. One was religious events, and that mainly also belonging to the Muslim community only. So other religious events were not allowed to be celebrated in the educational institutions. And the other kind of events that were being celebrated were national days, and those had, I was a very active student and I studied in 1980s and 90s. And now when I reflect back, I can see that all the national songs and all the celebrations were very much influenced by the armed forces. So all our national songs somehow bring in again the narrative of wars and warriors. 2006 curriculum reform was the first curriculum reform in which, with the help of UNESCO, the peace themes were infused, and some of the contents were removed intentionally, that these are hateful and these are glorifying the narratives of war. When I conducted my first research with my students, we could find the 10 peace themes as given in the UNESCO framework in 2001. They were infused in the books. And then there have been passive peace building efforts. Why I call them passive is because whenever there has been any such reform, it is labeled number one as foreign agenda. So after the indoctrination for like 2-3 decades, whatever positive changes for peace building were happening were labeled as foreign agenda. So that's a huge challenge. And then the last but not the least, when people talk about, or teachers talk about, or anyone talks about peace building with the neighboring countries, peace building with other people, they are labeled as traitors. And sometimes I even faced that you when you talk about peace, you are actually trying to make our new generations coward and not courageous enough. Then one of our research studies, after an incident happened in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, in which one school was attacked by the terrorists and more than 100 children lost their lives, and other children were traumatized because all this bloodshed happened in front of them. And after that, we conducted a study on school safety and security, and that brought some really disturbing details to us that how vulnerable the schools were. Coming to the recent most research that I conducted with one of my MPhil students, who is also here with us today, and this study was conducted in one of the tribal areas, district Dir, Lower. It is situated in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is the region which borders with Afghanistan. In this study, we actually got the details that how and what happens in post-conflict reforms. There were many schools opened by the government, and there were many schools opened by the local NGOs. Teachers were given hard area incentives to go and teach in those regions. Enrollment campaigns were launched so that people feel safe to send their children back to the schools. But the major challenges that are coming up in the peace building reform initiatives is that in Pakistan, most of the planning happens in the top-down approach, and the federal government and provincial bureaucracy works as if the local people do not know anything, and we know, so we will go and solve their problems. So this centralized planning approach and top-down approach, which does not include the local voices, makes it really challenging to solve the real local issues. Second major challenge is that there is a dictator mindset, as we talked about earlier. There is still a presence of armed forces, and the administration and the administrative bodies there, they also work in a dictator mindset. So when we see them talking to the teachers or even talking to the parents and school community, we see as if they're not there for peace building, but they are there for policing and stuff. Teachers don't know how a peace building reform education is different from a general education. So these teachers do have qualifications like B.Ed, or some of them even have M.Ed, but they have not been given any kind of training for peace building. They have not been given any kind of training for social, emotional learning, or for helping people to come out of trauma and to help these children and their families. And some of those teachers also mentioned that they are not native speakers, so they are there to teach their contents and their subjects, but they cannot communicate very well with the local communities. Why do I still see prospects in educational reforms is, number one, that is separately written on the slide, is that when I said it is a huge population, another fact that comes out and speaks to me is that 31% or 31 point something percent of the population is under the age of 15 years. It means we can make a difference with these children who are under the age of 15. And education, to me, is the best source to help them reconstruct their realities. I see a better approach adopted by the NGOs working, because they work closely with the communities. So the educational institutions and the educational initiatives by the NGOs, I perceive that as a prospect, and the people also feel more connected to them than the dictator mindset of government bureaucracy. Women in peace building. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, when I was working with my students and I traveled there, I was astonished to see that how many women are now leading these initiatives, and that to me is a is a healthy sign of building peaceful future. Non-formal and distance education is providing access to those girls and those boys who are already working or something. So non-formal education is giving them another pathway to learn and to get education. My research still in progress is to develop number one, a teacher education course for the prospective teachers who are planning to join teaching. And because I teach in a distance education institution, so I'm always optimist about it that we can reach to those regions easily. Then I'm also developing a professional development module right now, because as I said, the contents do have the elements of peace building. And in the recent revision of 2020, the curriculum revision, we even find more details and more explicit content than the previous one. But the teachers were not given orientation and professional development for that. So I'm working on that as well. I have recently published one book that is Healthy and Safe Schools. So that is also something that we are looking at, and we want to make schools as healthy, safe, and happy places for children. And last but not the least is that school community relationship is something which another girl is working with me at her PhD study. So these are my recent research initiatives. I would stop here, and I would love to have any questions or comments.